Fantastic. All right, welcome back to Curious Faith, questions and conversations for those people thinking about following Jesus again. I'm your host, Bill Wallace. This has been just a really fun series. We've been able to have some neat conversations over the last couple of weeks about some subjects, that were very broad and diverse for us, and I'm really excited about our conversation today as well. If you're watching us, then you'll notice that we aren't wearing masks, and that is because we live in the land of COVID, but yay for vaccines, right? We've got a fully vaccinated crew up here today, and so we are abiding by CDC guidelines and saying that we can be without masks if we're fully vaccinated. So love your neighbor, get yourself vaccinated. What a good thing to do right here in this season. I'm going to welcome in my guests at this time. Well, hello, guests.
Hello, Bill.
I suppose we can say
Yeah, you can respond back to that. That's good. For people watching or listening, would you introduce yourselves if you wouldn't mind?
I'm Laura Campbell. Good to meet everybody. I am a psychology student, and I work 2 part-time jobs, and I am 21. Should I go into religious a little bit?
Yeah, maybe in a little bit. Well, that's probably good for now.
I grew up in the church.
You grew up in the church?
No, keep it at that.
There you go. Perfect. Excellent.
And hi, guys. My name is Alec. I am 25. I live in Lake Forest Park. A student at UW studying supply chain management.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. And I also have 2 jobs currently. I work at Safeway in Marysville and at Yard House, Seattle, which is a restaurant downtown.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's right at 4th and Pike, just a few blocks from Pike Place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, great atmosphere, great pay while I'm in school, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember doing that. Multiple jobs while going through college. I don't miss that at all.
Sometimes it's a blessing and other times it's a curse.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow, cool. Thank you both for coming in and being a part of this. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to our topic for today. Before we do that, we always try to do just a question to get to know you a little bit more, and I'll answer first because I've had a chance to think about it. I was kind of curious if either of you would consider that you had a hidden talent that you might be willing to share, that it might be not so hidden. So for me, I was trying to think, particularly because I'm the host and most people know me, was there anything that people maybe didn't know? And although I think most people know I'm something of a musician and play guitar and bass and drums. Actually, one of my favorite instruments to play that I rarely ever play is the harmonica. I actually really love a good blues harmonica, and I have a distinct love memory of one time someone was going to do like a surprise prank and said, hey, I'm wondering if you can play the harmonica as this thing and this blues thing. And I was like, yeah, and they gave me a blues harmonica and got to this thing, and they pulled me up, and I just wailed away on it. They were like, what? I can play. It was very fun, but I rarely get to. So there's not much need in my job to wail away on a blues harmonica.
I guess for me, probably not as useful as that talent.
I'm not sure that's useful at all.
I can wiggle both of my ears, which, to reiterate, useless talent.
But look at that's so cool.
But yeah, so it's fun in social circumstances, I guess, when I want to joke in a way about showing affection. It comes in handy that way, or just in the most random scenarios. So useless, though.
Hey, but
talented,
hidden.
though.
Yeah, that's very talented.
Yeah,
that's very good. What do you got, Laura? I don't know, that's a high bar.
That is a high bar. Harmonica and ear wiggling?
Yeah.
Gosh, how do I compete with that?
both at the same time.
My go-to party trick is I can crack my elbow. Like if I but it's just the one arm. And I asked my chiropractor about it. I was like, hey, while I'm here, because I go for my back.
Yeah.
While I'm here, is this normal? And I did it for him, and he's like, no. And then just didn't elaborate. I was like, is there something wrong with me? Is this weird? And he's just like, just sometimes the body does that. I was like, well, I guess I'm not getting any answers today.
Yeah.
So that is my party trick.
And that'll be $150.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, there you go. I did not know either of those things. Perfect. So our question for today is jokingly, do you even care? And to elaborate a little bit about that, one of the things we try to do with Curious Faith is, to talk about questions. That's real big for me. I love questions. I think questions is often where we grow most in our faith, as opposed to just having someone hand us answers. And for me, as we've done that and gotten to know you, Laura, a little bit over the last couple of years, and some other folks within your same age range, I worry, I'll freely admit, more and more that those of us in the church, particularly church professionals, think that the things that you care about aren't the things that you actually care about. That the questions we think you have aren't the questions that y'all actually have. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of have a couple of folks on just to have that conversation, that when it comes to faith, when it comes to church, honestly, when it comes to the big stuff in life, what actually are you interested in? What questions do you have about faith, Jesus, church, all those things like that, as opposed to what we, a few years removed from your age range, had maybe at our time, or think that you have in your time there. So is that, thanks for coming in and just being a part of that. I guess my first question would be, am I right? Are we generally wrong? Do you feel like older generations have you pegged wrong about what is important to you, what questions you might have? Probably in general, but to narrow our focus just a little bit about faith-based stuff.
I think it's a repeating pattern where you have generations go through certain ages, and then the second that they've gotten through that stage, they forget what it's like entirely. So I'm almost 22, and I don't understand teenagers in 2021 at all.
Yeah.
I really don't. I feel like I'm generally close to their age. I was a teenager just a few years ago, but they're already growing up in such a different universe than I was when I was in high school. So we have these older adults, senior adults, I don't know, graduated adults, I don't know, there's different levels.
Geriatric
that
adults.
look and they're like, I don't understand these 20-somethings. And I was like, you were just a 20-something.
Mm-hmm.
But, and does that make any sense?
No,
what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah.
You forget immediately.
Yeah.
Yep, I would agree with that. Not only with issues regarding the social structure of teenagers or what their interests are, but probably also their religious beliefs. I would say that definitely the experience that each of us has growing up in a church, it changes over time. Mm-hmm. You could just point to technology as one huge change that's happened in the last couple decades that probably wasn't around when you were our age going through youth group and all those times. So just looking at it from that perspective of societal changes, I think that there's a lot of scenarios where someone in your shoes could have the wrong interpretation of what someone may be thinking who is our age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, assuming that's true, and again, I think you're right. I think you said that really well. There's always this kind of generational amnesia almost of, you forget both how hard it was and in some ways how good it was too. That's pretty easy to do. From this context, for you two personally, you don't have to speak for your entire generation. I'd be curious how you would answer the questions, and I think I would split it up. Does faith matter to you, and does church matter to you? And I think I would split those two up, and you can tell me if you even agree with that. But yeah, does faith matter to you? Does church matter to you?
Yeah, no, I too would definitely split them up. If not even faith, like spirituality,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
Because one can find spirituality in a number of outlets. My girlfriend, for example, has gotten into like astrology and
okay.
all of that sort of thing recently. Me, not so much, right? But it gives her a sense of comfort and a sense of something to look forward to and investigate and share feelings about. And so with that in mind, going back to like me personally, I do not have a reason to associate myself with a church in order to have that spiritual connection, and whatever that may be, right? So like relationships with others, or the feeling that I get when I'm out in the woods of just surreal experiences. Personally, yeah, for me, I've found other outlets that don't involve church for those means.
I want to touch on the astrology bit real quick because I think that that's a great example, because we're really quick to point fingers and go, well, that's a little silly, isn't it? And it's like, if you think about anything for too long, it becomes a little bit silly. Christians believe in the rapture. If we want to delve into that, that's a bit silly in itself.
That'd be a fun
But,
conversation. Yes,
That's
it
a rabbit
would.
trail for another day. No, well, I look at human beings have always asked the question why since the beginning of time. We've tried to figure out a reason for everything since, we were invented. I don't know. Whoever invented us, Adam and Eve, whatever you'd like to believe. And I find that really interesting because I think we all have the innate sense of we want to understand the world, and we all pick a different lens through which we're trying to understand it. So whether it's astrology, which seems a bit silly, or Christianity or Buddhism or whatever religion or whatever church denomination you choose, that's how you're connecting with something higher than yourself. And I also think it's interesting to look at the crossover between like faith communities have always been a thing, and they're still a thing, and I think they always will be a thing because people are trying to connect with one another. For words are failing me at the moment, but with something as big as God or the universe or anything, it helps to have people around trying to figure out and ask the same questions all at the same time too. And so, like, worship is a super powerful thing that I really enjoy. I've always loved worship, and going to church and like kind of like the repetition of it, and like that being a thing that you can count on, and that having that in your schedule, and having like the same group of people that you interact with, like building that community around your faith can be really powerful if you find the right community.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, that was fantastic. And there's so many rabbit trails. I want to go down. But we're going to pick one,
Okay.
and we'll start there. I think both of you might have used the words connection and community. I would love to hear. Again, I'll throw my bias out, put my cards on the table. I know that I want my church to be known for being a place of connection and community. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. When you think of a church, do you think of it as being a place of connection or community? And if so, awesome. If not, actually, what words would you put when you think of a church? What comes to mind immediately for you? I'd be totally curious about that.
Yeah, so I grew up going to church. My mom was very invested in it. My dad, not so much, but it was a family effort that we made every week. And as I look back on it from this point in my life, there are so many benefits that a church community gave me when I was a child. the positive connections and relationships that you could count on and were consistent week after week were formative for developing as a young person. The church that I went to was in a suburb of Philadelphia. I'm from the East Coast.
Oh, cool.
It was a UCC church.
Okay.
And the population at this church was older, right? And getting older.
Yeah.
And replenishment of younger families was always the focus, yet never happening. So
I think you just described 90% of churches.
yeah. So it was like, again, looking back on it now, it's interesting to like think about what was happening during those times when I was a kid and the church was trying to expand and be welcoming to more diverse groups of people. Among the older populations, there were very conservative views on who could be allowed in the church. I was too young to ever attend any of these meetings, but I had heard of a couple of the prominent elder members in particular talking about how homosexuals would never have a place in our church and African Americans and alike. So that was, I would say, at the time, probably early to mid 2000s. And by the time I was graduating high school, some of those opinions were definitely starting to shift in the church as the community realized that nothing we're doing is working to attract more families or more diverse families for that matter. And so, let's see, where was I going with that? It was a good environment to grow up in, but for me to seek out a church, living on my own and having a full-time schedule of tasks and things that I'm prioritizing and things that I'm foregoing because I'm doing other things. For me personally, devoting time to church or religion in that matter is low on the totem pole.
Yeah.
When I'm making my schedule and figuring out what's important to me, I still have a sense of spirituality. I think it's a guidance for everyone in whatever way they define it as. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of benefits of the way that I grew up and going to church as a kid that I'm grateful for.
I think it's interesting that the way that you phrase it is, I think a lot of people go into church thinking, what can the church do for me? And you have it set up in a way where like kids go to Sunday school and, you know, and babies are taken care of during the service. And then when you're done with Sunday school, you go to youth group, and in middle school it's super fun and you're doing dodgeball and, you know, paint nights or whatever middle schoolers do, and playing sardines and watching VeggieTales. And then high school group is kind of where you start to lose people. And then college is where it really drops off because you have people moving away and wanting to go and find themselves. How dare they? And then you kind of have people coming back when they have families again, because families are looking for some sort of community because they're like, oh my gosh, we have these tiny children that we need help with. Where can we go? Oh, look, this church has, you know, Sunday school during sermons, and we can get rid of them for an hour. And then the cycle kind of repeats. It's like that dip off, and then you get people back in, and then people tend to stay, and then a lot of, you know, you don't have to worry about the older folks. Older folks are always going to be in the church. They love church. They always will. But it's that dip off that we're talking about today, where it's like, well, why is there not anything that the church is doing for people that age? Because that's the point at which, we don't really have anything for them. There's not anything as enticing. It's like, how can churches be the place to be when there's so many other things that college kids suddenly can do? You know, it's like beer pong or study the Bible. I don't know. So, tough to choose.
Yeah. That's very good. I'm not sure how I want to answer the beer pong question. I feel like that's a trap right there for me.
Beer pong.
Can we do beer pong with like ginger ale or something?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's it. So again, that I'm both weirdly encouraged to hear you both talk, and of course discouraged at the same time, because it sounds like what you have found in churches, and what you think a church could do is, really positive, and worthwhile and fulfilling. But to your point, and I'll tell you as the church professional, we've seen that dip for a while, but what we're really seeing is that it never quite comes back up, and and churches are shrinking fast. We used to, just wait until y'all had kids and then you'd all come back. But they're not coming back like they used to. And those that do, don't always stick around like they did. If we've got something that's worth sharing, why are we doing such a lousy job of sharing it? Why is it not connecting, not just with your age range, but even when you start looking for that again, when you start looking to find that connection piece again, what aren't we doing that either we used to do? Do we have just better inertia? Were there fewer options? I would be curious as to what you think on that.
Well, I'll just give you a very specific answer and keep it short for this one. And just one thing of a larger situation. So I talked about the church that I went to growing up, and with declining membership, the church was very strapped for cash, right? And held committees to figure out how it could distribute funds or divert funds or sell off assets that it had to cover its expenses because it was no longer bringing in enough money on a weekly basis through the offering system to fund its rent and electricity bill and all that. So my parents had told me, because I was curious about it, I was like, well, so is any portion of what you guys are giving on a week-to-week basis going to any humanitarian effort, or is it going 100% to paying church bills with still the trajectory of it going to bankruptcy in the next however many years? And so to me, like thinking about it now, looking back, like to have my parents funding an operation that was like spiraling, right? Seems unproductive when they could give that money directly to organizations that would help fund initiatives in our community or across the globe. And so it's like what's the term? I don't know, but like it's the reason people, or the reason I in that scenario would stop giving is because I know the money is going to something that is unsustainable. But then if I were to stop giving, then it makes the problem
even
worse.
more
So it's whatever that term is.
Is it catch-22?
maybe.
think he-
Almost, yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that was just one specific
No,
example
yeah,
that like
that's fascinating.
would go through my head like, well, why would I do this if I could do something
yeah,
else?
do that. Sure.
Yeah, questioning the logic of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, for you, I mean, you again, grew up in church and actually have been around this church a little bit. Kind of know what we're trying to message. Again, feel free, be honest. What's missing in the message? What's not connecting?
What's missing in the message and what's not connecting? Just gonna mull that over for a second.
Yeah.
Um,
And you got 90 seconds to
I'm on a time limit. I'm going blank. I think that there's a lot of avoiding the big topics, and then when the big topics are touched on, they're not addressed in the proper, correct way. I mean, I'll talk about the elephant in the room. Just like certain political things have been a big divide, and I don't necessarily think that that's a new thing. I think that that's,
Yeah.
we'll talk about like, the political divide in the church nowadays about if women can wear pants or not.
Right, yeah.
That was the big thing back then,
There was always
And
something.
there's always
Yeah.
going to be something. There's always going to be new things that the church is discussing and having to decide their stance on, and saying like, okay, well, it clearly says in the Bible this and that, and that's always going to be a thing that's tossed around, that it clearly is stated in the Bible,
Yep.
which I'm just honestly exhausted hearing at this point, because I'm like, it's not a clear book.
That's
I-
that's actually a really good thing
Yeah.
to have said out loud.
Yeah.
Because that's the go-to shut down the conversation phrase.
yeah.
Is it said in the Bible?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And clearly said, therefore.
It feels like such a cop-out answer that it feels it feels exhausting at certain points. It's like, why do I keep trying to fit in a place where everything that is important to me is a little too vague, and then when it's brought up, you need to just have faith, or it's clearly written in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's like, I have questions, I'd like for them to be answered. And then I think, like, am I asking them in the right way, or is this like the church's fault? So I don't know if it's like a me thing or church thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
So I don't know the Bible that well. I've never read it. But I do have a sense of what some of the stories say. And granted, like, interpretation is big, right? Because if you take everything literal that's in the Bible, like, it could contradict itself here and there or be outright inhumane. And so my perspective on it is that because it's so like wishy-washy on its messaging, and because it has messaging in it that really would make someone wonder, like, really, this is what we're believing? It's hard to associate any belief or value in that word.
It's also tough because, like, we're Christian, we believe in the Bible. It's like, well, that's it, that's the whole thing. But then it's like, well, like, it's a little bit more intricate than that, because there's Christianity, and then there's denominations of Christianity, and then each church, even if they're the same denomination, they have their own, like, what was it called? Like, their doctrine, and they have it posted on their website, and like the specific points that they believe in, and it's like, I think y'all are just creating different religions at this point. I don't really know if y'all are the same brothers and sisters in Christ that you think you are, because I think you're from entirely different families here at this point. So it's not even a, like, Christians versus atheists issue. It's a more like the church is divided too. So, That's tough too.
Yeah. No, the church, we divide really well. Yeah. We've done that really well for, I don't know, about 2,000 years or so. One of the last questions I really would be curious about, because, well, we'll just see. One of the things I think churches have gravitated towards, have moved towards, as we've started to figure out that maybe we're asking the wrong questions, is a belief that younger people, although they may be less interested in faith, spirituality, the church, that there is still interest in Jesus, whether or not that be like a relationship with Jesus, as we would use that language, but at least interest in Jesus, trying to figure that out, him out, what he said. Yes, no, wrong on that? Is even that shifting? 'Cause I would, again, to preface, I would say that was true for my generation when we were young. Like, I do remember that. There was still that. Well, I'm not so sure about this, but I'm this Jesus cat. Like, I want to find out, more about him. Has that shifted as well? Would that still be true?
I'd say the opposite. I think even bringing up the name Jesus is kind of a turnoff of like, because you have the term Jesus freak, and then they're speaking Christianese, and it's like, you've kind of lost people at that point. The second you introduce any term of Christianese, you're already going to start losing people's attention. And so I'd say people want to have a relationship with God, and they're not necessarily interested in Jesus. So that's how I think about it.
I agree with that also. Not that I hear the term Jesus thrown around a lot in my friend circles, but if I just played through my head, if I heard, the phrase, "Oh, God has a plan for me," as opposed to something relating to Jesus, that would seem more extreme to me if I heard the name Jesus as opposed to God. So that's a really good point that I haven't thought about. Again, I can't speak for everyone my age, but for me personally, it's not something that I see value in pursuing, and that's mostly just my personal interpretation of it over the last 10 years or so that I've had the capability to really think through some of the things surrounding religion and all of that.
Thank you. I know we got to wrap up. You said something right there, which again is both terribly encouraging and terribly discouraging. I will say, as a parent and as someone who did a lot of youth ministry, one thing I always talked about with kids as they would come up through youth group was that I wanted them to get to a point where they took ownership of their faith, where they didn't have the faith of their parents, where they were starting to make these decisions for themselves. And now that I am that parent with kids making those decisions for themselves, I realize how much more terrifying that was. Oh, wait, but that means they'll think on their own and maybe not think what I want them to think anymore. And here I was, this 28, 29-year-old youth pastor saying, no, this is good. And now I'm like, oh, bad. I bet there are some parents who are like, oh, don't tell me that. But that's it. Like, you got to that point where you started making those decisions for yourselves, and you've ended up in a pretty different spot than you were 10 years ago.
Totally.
And that's, again, that's encouraging to me because you did. I guess the discouraging part would be, apparently somehow within that you have not heard what I would hope you would have heard.
I think that also speaks to God created free will for a reason. So, and then it's kind of, it is kind of scary to watch people make decisions that you may not think are the correct choices. But that's the beauty of it, because if everybody were automatically Christian, if everybody were just, everybody had the same faith, it wouldn't be unique, and it wouldn't be as powerful. And so people choosing to come to church of their own free choice and their own free will, I think that's an incredible thing in itself, that people can say no,
Yeah.
and people can come when they want, and they can go when they want.
Yeah. Yeah, the church really likes free will when it works in our favor.
Yeah.
And boy, then when it doesn't, This was a fantastic conversation. Oh my gosh, just fascinating. Thank you both so much, really, truly, for coming and be a part of this. I really do hope we've got, I hope we have a number of people, in your boat that might listen to this. But I really, really hope that there are a number of lifelong Christians and church professionals who listen to this, because we need to. Was there anything that we didn't get to, or anything that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Just on the whole issue of discussing it, I am one to always seek discussion and other opinions. So I commend you for having these sort of conversations. So thank you for having me. I didn't know what I was walking into, but it was fun. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. The first step to finding the answers is asking it all.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us today.
Oh, yeah, really, really appreciate it. Thank you. You're welcome back anytime. For real. Cool. Thank you for watching or listening, wherever you've been watching or listening from. Continue to follow on each week as we dive into stuff like this. This was a ton of fun. We gotta do more like this, and please join us for the one we've got next week as well. I think it's gonna be really, really interesting. So, thank you, Laura, Alec. Good luck in the next couple of weeks for you. Pass those classes. You got this.
Yep. Fingers crossed.
Very good, very good. And we'll see you back here another time. We'll see you back here another time as well. Bye-bye.